Welcome into Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast on Tuesday, October 8th. Brendan Glasheen joined by BJ Cunningham of the Action Network. He covers a ton for us over at Action Network, but he's in baseball mode right now. Well, he's flipping between modes in this busy time of year. But here we go. NL Division Series continue on this Tuesday. So just two games to look at. The drama in these series, I was telling Zerillo this yesterday, being out for a week and getting myself back into the mix. I'm like, wow. I watched the action, but man, I mean, it's hard to ignore that the NL side has just been way more compelling. Other than people ragging on Bob Costas, that makes me feel sad. On the American League side, it feels like that's the lead story. But anyway, Phillies Mets tied 1-1. Series now shifts to New York. Dodgers Padres series now in San Diego. That series tied 1-1. We'll get a best bet from BJ in each of these games. Phillies Mets starts just after 5 o'clock Eastern. Where are you going here as far as the Phillies and the Mets are concerned, with Nola on the mound for Philadelphia and Sean Manaea for the Mets?
Yeah, I do like under 7 at anything, even money or better right now. I projected 6.7 runs for this game, so there was an early 7.5 that I know me and Zerillo both grabbed. Now it's down to 7, but I still think it's still playable at 7 at even money. So the thing about Nola is if you look through his game log, you'll see that he got hammered by the Mets in a start in September. But that was really the only start where he had struggles. And even in that start, he only had a 2.5 xFIP. So he was pretty unlucky to actually give up 6 runs in that start. In September and October, so far, he has a 2.56 xFIP. That is his best stretch of any month overall this season. And his K per 9 rate has gone up to 12 per 9. So he's definitely getting a lot better. And what he has a big advantage over here over the Mets is the fact that he has been really, really good with his knuckle curve. And the Mets aren't very good against curveballs in general. They're in the bottom half of Major League Baseball in terms of expected weighted on base average. Nola has a 37% whiff rate on that knuckle curve. So I think he has a pretty decent matchup here against this Mets lineup. And with the day off, obviously the bullpens will be available. But I do think both these starting pitchers will get a longer leash than maybe we've seen throughout these playoffs for in general. I think it's been kind of funny. I was watching the Tigers and Cleveland series yesterday, and I was like, Stephen Vogt went heat check for a second. Like he had a plan in place for Matthew Boyd to only see the lineup 2 times through. And then he was like, you know what? He's pitching well. Let's just let him keep going here. And then he got an absolute rocket hit off the first hitter that they ended up getting a guy out at second. But I digress. In any case, Sean Manaea has really improved over the second half of the season, and because his main pitch, his sinker, has gotten a lot better. Stuff plus on a sinker from the first half is 89. Now it's at 104 over the second half of the season. He had a pretty decent start against Milwaukee in the wild card round. And again, the bullpens will be fully available here. These were 2 top 5 bullpens overall in Major League Baseball, like throughout the entire season. I know they've kind of blown up a little bit in this series, and I know specifically the Mets bullpen has blown up a couple different times here late on, but I think the total is a little too high here. So I like under 7 runs at even money.
Okay, very good. Again, first, just after 5 o'clock, first pitch, 5 Eastern, Mets and Phillies tied 1-1. Who do you like in the series right now?
It's tough, man. I think the Phillies are set up a little bit better as we get into, like, I like Ranger Suarez against Quintana. I think is a great matchup in Game 4. So it all comes down to, honestly, I think the winner of this game wins the series. Honestly,
And that's kind of how you feel in this next one too.
Yeah.
Padres Dodgers is tonight as well. Whole lot going on here off the field. Well, on the field, but not during actual gameplay. But I can't even keep track of it now, because now you go online and you just try to sift through all the crap. Flaherty, Machado, who said what, and then you got Profar with the camera in the stands. Tatis is doing stuff or getting harassed. It sets up for some amazing theater, which the sport has to be thrilled about, especially on this side of the bracket. These bigger, I wouldn't call the Padres a big market, but they've got big market players on their team. As we know, the whole company was high on this team last year, and I was saying this to Zerillo. I think they finally this was the season we expected last year, I think, from San Diego, and now they've put it together and they keep spending. But anyway, You just told me before we started the podcast that for the Padres World Series hopes, NL pennant hopes, with a tied 1-1 series going back home, you think they've got to get this one, or they're in some serious trouble with Michael King on the mound against Walker Buehler.
I don't necessarily mean that. What I mean by that is like it has set up so perfectly for them right here, right?
Okay.
So like losing this game where they have their best starting pitcher on the mound, or at least who's been their best starting pitcher over the second half of the season against Walker Buehler, who really hasn't been that good, like in their minus 150 favorites. Like if you lose this game, suddenly then you obviously have to win a game 4, and then the series does go back to Los Angeles eventually. And then the Dodgers can set everything up for game 5. So I think that for the San Diego people, for the people out there who have tailed us on these San Diego futures, like this is the moment that we wanted, right? Like we're here, we got game 2. We have everything set up perfectly now for game 3. And obviously game 4, we don't know who the starting pitchers are going to be. Probably going to be bullpen games from each team. Now that obviously Joe Musgrove is not available either for the Padres. But I think in this game right here, the line is set about right. You know, we don't know the status of Freddie Freeman, of whether he's going to actually play in this game. He was removed from game 2. I think this line is indicating that he's not going to be in the lineup, which obviously hurts the Dodgers. But the line is a little high on the Padres here. Like I wouldn't be going laying minus 150 with them here. I think there's a couple different angles that you can play it. I was looking through some different prop angles here. So the first one I was kind of looking at, Walker Buehler's outs prop was 14.5 last night. Now it's down to 13.5. I wouldn't really play that. He faced the Padres in his last start of the regular season, and he actually pitched pretty good. He went 5 innings, only gave up 1 run. He did only have 1 strikeout as well. But he is somebody who has struggled since he's come back from the injury. He's got an ERA over 5, an expected ERA over 4. And if you look through his splits between home and away, it is actually pretty drastic. His xFIP is well over 5 when he's not pitching in Dodger Stadium. And the other aspect of Walker Buehler is the fact that he just hasn't been effective with his fastball. It's the pitch that he throws most often, but he's allowing a 455 expected weighted on base average. So, and if you know anything about the Padres, they're one of the best lineups in baseball at hitting fastballs. And his secondary pitch, cutter, Padres are also incredible at hitting that pitch as well. So for me, I was looking at potentially Walker Buehler over 4.5 hits. There was a minus 140 out there. I think is a little bit of interesting. He's given up over 5 or more hits in about 70% of his starts this season. Gave up 5 hits against the Padres in that final start of the regular season when he was really at his best. But the worry from there is like, how long is the leash, right? Because now that we're tied up 1 game apiece, and the Dodgers most likely are going to have to go with a bullpen game or land a knack and some type of that in game 4, how long of the leash does he actually get if they fall behind? It's interesting. Yamamoto gave up 5 runs. They only gave him 3 innings. Flaherty got into some trouble, but they let him go all the way and go 5 1/3. So it's interesting. I don't really know what the Dodgers' plan is here with Buehler. So instead, I was kind of looking at that and then maybe attacking some of the Padres hitters of who have the best possible matchups against Walker Buehler. And the guy that just kept popping up was Fernando Tatis. And I know he's the best hitter that the Padres have. But this season against fastballs, cutters, and curveballs, which are Walker Buehler's main 3 pitches, he has over a 380 expected weighted on base average against all of those pitches. All those are number 1 on the Padres. He just lights up off the board in terms of this matchup. And even lifetime, he has 28 at-bats against Walker Buehler, and he's hit 4 home runs off of him and has 4 other doubles as well. So I like Tatis over 1.5 bases at even money. And how about him to hit a homer as well at plus 360? I think it's about the best possible match that you can ask for Tatis here, because I don't know what the plan is going to be here for Buehler, because again, with that bullpen game in game 2, I know it's the playoffs, you empty your bullpen, like who cares? But if the Dodgers are planning on going to the bullpen game in game 4, do they let Walker Buehler get a longer leash here, even if he runs into trouble? I think we don't know the answer to that question right now.
Outs prop for Buehler is marked at 13.5.
Yeah, that's low, honestly, because again, I don't know how long he's generally going to go here. I get, if he gets into trouble, and like, again, it's a bad matchup for him here against the Padres. If he gets into trouble, I mean, of course the Dodgers will go to their bullpen. They're not just going to let him give up 5 or 6 runs. But if it's someone like Flaherty, where he gives up like 3 runs in the first inning and then, is able to kind of get this and then gives up another, 1 or 2, do they yank him in the third or fourth, or they just keep letting him go depending on what the score is? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. I know they do these, Brendan, they some books will post these outs props live as the game is going along. That might be a better way to play it as it's going along, depending on the score and depending on how Buehler is doing. So if I were to play an outs prop now, I think maybe I would just look to play it live and see how the game kind of plays out.
Mm-hmm. Man, just watching, and we'll see how tonight goes, but Zerillo brought this up weeks ago about what the Dodgers pitching was going to look like in a shortened series like this, and it is glaringly bad.
Yeah.
Based on what they've invested in Miller, Kershaw, Glasnow not available, or Glasnow's not available, but and of course Ohtani's not pitching this year. But it's amazing. Like they've got this is where they're at. Like they're Walker Buehler on a short leash in a potential situation. You might go down 2-1 in the division series in a best of 5.
And then you got to have Landon Knack pitching a do or die game in Game 4. Yeah, I mean, if you look through it,
and I felt your pessimistic approach coming on here. Okay, like so that it's set up. I get your point.
I'm saying it's like it's perfectly set up. So if it doesn't happen, it's going to be like devastating right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Grove is their long relief guy. That if Buehler gets in trouble, like he's going to have to come out of the pen. Like they're going to have to empty everything here. The Dodgers are going to have to. So, and then that even sets up. And if they don't win it, or even if they do win it, like it sets up pretty decently for the Padres in Game 4 as well. Like it's a great series. Honestly, it's a really compelling, really fun series, and it's setting up so perfectly here for the Padres. And one thing I'll also mention is if you don't want to pay minus 150 on the Padres right now, they're like you can find a minus 115 for them to win this series, which I think might be a better way to play it as well, to just get a shorter price. And if they win this game, you can obviously hedge the other way as well.
Okay, and we don't know who they're going to throw in Game 4.
It has not been announced yet.
You mentioned possibility of a bullpen game for the Dodgers in Game 4.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be Landon Knack.
Knack, right. Okay, thank you. Yep.
In Game 4 for the Dodgers. I mean, right as of right now, the schedule is saying that Dylan Cease can pitch for the Padres, which would give them a significant edge. So yeah, if you got Landon Knack in a bullpen game versus Dylan Cease, I mean, I would probably take the Padres series line right now. I actually might bet that once we get off the podcast here.
Okay. Feels too good to be true, but
that's what I'm saying.
You guys have been hitting on this all year. The Dodgers, they had the stretch without Betts, which totally changes their lineup. But even with Betts, with Ohtani, and now Freeman in question, if all those guys are playing top-heavy lineup, no question, you're probably drafting. You're drafting at the very least. You're drafting Ohtani and Betts first if you had to draft the series, I think, and then you could argue like the next 6 guys are Padres. If you had to draft the series to figure out who's got the most great players. Real quick before we go, because you're going to come on with us again tomorrow, and I should have said this from the top, and I'll remind myself to do it again tomorrow. If you haven't heard yet, we are here every weekday when there is a game, when there is at least a playoff game on. This week, of course, with the division series, we've had 2 each day. That's been the routine. We will be here every weekday this week. We know that for sure, depending, of course, if there's games. So as long as there's games on, we're doing a show. Weekdays here for Payoff Pitch at 10 a.m. Eastern. Our record times. We'll get the pods out as soon as possible. You're going to be here tomorrow, but you did give out a bunch of you guys give out Yankees and Royals Game 4, or pardon me, Game 3. Over 7.5. That number's moved to 8. I wanted to just bring that up now because there has been some line movement on that. Yeah. Our colleague Anthony DeBundo, I loved what he put in the app. He said, he's our former colleague Anthony DeBundo, but he's a gem. We still like DeBundo. He's calling Kauffman Stadium Coors Light as opposed to Coors Field. I thought that was funny. I'm going to give DeBundo his flowers. Coors Light, that's good. Why and over in that game, which is on Wednesday?
Well, so I projected 8.8 runs in that game. And, the Royals park factor this year, at least over a 5-year period now, has gotten into like you said, into that Coors Field type of territory. What is interesting is, what do the Yankees do with Clark Schmidt in this game? Because he's been pretty average if we're looking at all of his expected metrics. I know that in his 16 starts he has a 2.8 ERA, but his expected ERA is at 3.7. And the Royals hit right-handed pitching very, very well. And as you've seen from the Royals in this playoffs, they are a really good base running team. Like, they are stealing bases left and right. And if the Yankees can't control the run game, I worry about that. And, Lugo, and we've been down this road with Lugo many times before. Difficult pitcher to prepare for because he has so many different pitches that he throws. A little bit of a negative regression candidate. He pitched well in the series against Baltimore. But, from a projection standpoint, even if these bullpens are heavily involved here, let's be honest, these aren't two of the best bullpens in baseball as well. So I was going through and doing the projections last night, and I was like, okay, so we have two kind of like slightly above average starting pitchers against two really good offenses here. And even if the bullpens get more involved, like, that increases the projection of how many runs I'm actually projecting for this game. So for me, it's simply just a projection edge. I'll have more tomorrow as I dive deeper into the game. But just from a first look standpoint, I know Zerillo probably projected somewhere close to where I did because he said it was good to 8 minus 110. So my guess is he'd be somewhere around 8.6, 8.7. So if you can get an 8 even money right now, I would play that. I think that's still good. We'll see what the line is tomorrow morning. If we get bet out of this, maybe we'll look at some different angles, maybe some first five stuff or some prop angles.
Okay. Very good. Just figured I'd mention that because you guys, a bunch of you guys, you, Charlie, Sean, put that in the app last night.
The totals have been interesting in these playoffs because, you have some series where I think the totals open a little too high and you see them continually get bet down. And then there's a couple totals, like specifically this series, where it's just kind of has to do with the bullpens and the starting pitching matchups, right? Because if we don't have two very good bullpens, then, we have totals that maybe are set a little too high. So I think that this was the case. The total just came out a little bit too low, and it's been bet up accordingly. We'll see how far it goes, though.
Okay, very good. For BJ Cunningham, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for tuning in to Payoff Pitch. We are Action Network's MLB betting podcast. Back at it again, myself and BJ, Wednesday morning. Padres, please. We're going to be in a bad mood tomorrow. So, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.